Dave, what's your pick?
Mine is the Crow.
Oh, fucking A. That's
The Crow
awesome.
strikes back.
I really have no right to pick anything else.
Yeah.
Dave, do you know anything about The Crow? Do you know?
I saw it when I was a kid. I loved it, so I rewatched it recently. But that was about it.
You beefed up on. You read the Wikipedia page before we started recording, right? Like,
yeah, I got it printed out just in case.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? He wrote the fucking Wikipedia.
I know.
I did used to check the IMDb. I'm like, that's not right.
I gotta go in there and edit that shit.
No, what did he say on the one episode? He's just like, I care just under enough to not lose my life to maintaining the JCVD Wikipedia page.
I stand by that. It's a good thing I got this going on.
I care just not enough.
I know so much about The Crow just because of you, Dave. It's insane.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That'll enrich the discussion.
All of my Crow knowledge has come secondhand from Dave, that's for sure. Like,
and this poster.
Well, so for anyone, and there's the poster right there.
And by the way, it was written by a Marine.
Fuck yeah, it was written by a Marine, Mr. James O'Barr. When I met him maybe 2 or 3 years ago, he was wearing an army jacket with a Joy Division patch, and that's what you want when you meet James O'Barr.
Absolutely.
And so the Crow is based on an underground comic book written by James O'Barr, an artist that's his main claim to fame, and he wrote it as the result of a personal tragedy. As a teenager, his girlfriend was killed by a drunk driver, and then he engaged in some very self-destructive behavior. He enlisted in the Marines to try to bring some structure to his life, and maybe keep as he says, the razors from his wrists. And while he was stationed in Germany, listening to a lot of Joy Division and The Cure, he made this sketch, something called Crow, and it was essentially this kind of leather-clad figure wearing the drama mask. I think it's for irony. So it's like he wears a smile. He wears a makeup. It's actually British, I think. The three masks of it's in America we just have drama and tragedy. But I think this is literally off the top of my head, so I could be wrong. But it's I think in Britain they have it's like drama, tragedy, and irony. And so the Crow was this sort of central figure. So he was an artist. So he channeled this anger and rage he felt at having someone torn away from him into this, what ended up becoming this comic book that he did as kind of therapy, as he said. But it became so the premise of the comic is that a young couple is their car breaks down and then a gang drives by and on a deserted road, and they rape and murder the girl, and they shoot the man in the head, and he goes to the hospital with the head injury. And as he's kind of in his dying moments, he's sort of seized upon this image of a bird, a crow that he saw maybe flying in the sky when they sort of suggest that as the torture of his partner, his fiance, they're newly engaged, was going on, that he was kind of semi-aware, and he has this like sort of split scar across his nose where the bullet wound didn't quite exit, and then as he's kind of, as he's flatlining in the hospital, he sort of sees this. The whole thing is this crow bird is saying like, "Don't look," trying to tell him like, you don't want to see this, kind of what's happening. And then essentially a year later, he comes back from the grave and just seeks out that small gang of 5 men that ruined his life and that of his fiance. And in the comics, it's told like you don't find that out until like they did a short run in the late 80s. It got picked up by basically like he was drawing this just because, and then he was working on cars, painting touch-up jobs on cars in Detroit in the early 80s. And he was going into this comic shop where other kind of comic artists were going. And eventually the guy that ran the comic shop started a comic imprint just to put out these books. So it wasn't like he was a
That's
career
awesome.
artist or something. He was just doing this so he didn't fucking kill himself. And then so it's an incredible. It is a singular and astounding.
That's what I feel like about this show sometimes.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God this show is a little less blood drenched than that book. But so if you're curious about The Crow, we've seen and liked the movie, do seek out that comic somehow. It is something to behold, and it really carries a serious weight with it.
It is considered among comic book fans like a seminal work.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it is up in the lines with Sin City, The Watchmen, and he wrote He wrote one book.
Yep.
And everybody talks about comics. They say, read Sin City, read Watchmen, and read The Crow.
You know,
Right.
I have that downstairs since I procured my Foot Locker back from my old man's place. I think that's down in that Foot Locker. I need to go down and dig that out. And actually, I literally got that because of your movie that you released in high school, Dave.
Oh, I didn't know you have that. That's so cool.
So, my dad drove for Capital City, which was a comic book distributor, and we could order comic books at cost, like less than cost, literally like the cost of the materials. That's what we got comic books for. So like he would get these big promo packs that had like that they would send out to comic book shops that had like pogs in them and like promo cards.
Ooh,
and
pogs. Nice.
and
What's
like,
up there?
I'm sorry. What's a pog? I feel like what's a Nubian? It's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
What's a pog?
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Bitch, you almost made me laugh.
Yeah.
Black
A pog. It's that game that where you collected them. They were like little cardboard discs, and you would make a stack and try to slam them.
Oh,
If you got them to flip
the most worthless hobby that ever existed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It made no sense, but everyone was into it.
So but every week, basically, comic books come out every week, right? Or every month?
Tuesdays. I think it's
Every
usually
Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So every week he would go into work with our order where I got to like just because I could order a stack of comic books this tall and it'd be like $15 out of his paycheck.
Oh,
like,
I'm jealous.
you know what I like? So, now let's flip that. This was also in the death knock of the comic book industry, like the end of the Silver Age, right? Right after Death of Superman. So like he was working there right at the time that all of the where they would put all of the issues together into one massive issue. Those were just getting released of the Death of Superman and the Return of Superman and all that stuff. So this is on the he got laid off from that job because the comic book industry like folded in on itself.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. So what decade yearish was this?
90s.
So 90,
90s.
like 93 to 95-ish.
Yeah, they were overprinting because it was becoming a collection thing where they were trying to print more and more and more, and the supply just ended up being more than they could actually meet.
They totally misunderstood the idea of value and collecting. That the reason old comic books were valuable was because there were so few of them, because they were worthless. People threw them away. And so when Death of Superman came out, I mean, there's whole documentaries on this that you could watch.
Yeah, I haven't. I've been YouTube. I'm writing that down. With the Death of Superman, that is a relatively recent documentary. Oh wait, no, I'm thinking. Sorry, there's a documentary about the movie Return of Superman.
That almost happened. Yeah. That was based on that.
Was that called Death of Superman? What is that?
No, that was the Return of Superman. I think is what that was called.
And ultimately, that's what it became, I guess, with Brandon Routh.
Yeah.
But yeah, the original iteration was Tim Burton and Nicolas Cage. So
yeah. But they just like Mr. J said, they overprinted thinking that these were going to be collector's items. And the fact that they saturated their own market literally devalued them down to nothing. Like this is a sidebar, and then I'll give mine, and then we can start talking about our movie. When I went to move to Hawaii, I took that Foot Locker to Kenmore Comics in Kenmore because I was trying to get as much money as I could before I moved to Hawaii, because I needed to like literally start up from the ground up out there. And I like pulled out this stack that's all like Death of Superman comics essentially. And it's around that same time that the Bane thing happened with Batman, where he broke his back. Yeah. And so that's essentially all we would order was Batman and Superman out of there. My dad thinks that he's going to send me to college with these comic books, right? And so I put that stack out, and the guy at Kenmore Comics is just like, I could put those in at 15 cents a piece in that box over there and nobody would buy them. He's like, that box is actually full of those comics right now. Like it wouldn't do any good. So
shit.
How did you end up with the Crow? Is that where you're working towards?
Oh yeah. So around that time gets to my freshman year, which is when you release your version of the Crow, right?
Oh yeah. And just in the interest of every comic is someone's first comic. I won't get into this too long, but basically I saw the movie adaptation of that comic book and was so enthralled as like a 14-year-old that I spent the next 4 years of my own life readapting that already brilliantly cinematically adapted movie to VHS done by teenagers as closely adhering to the comic book as possible. And so that's what Palmer's referring to.
So you don't know, I don't know you beyond we ordered that copy of the Crow.
Yeah,
to have at a Halloween party.
Yeah.
And you know, I thought about it in hindsight. You did deliver that. I remember you delivering that to my house on Sunset. Yeah.
So I came to the door. I'm so amazed. I had the bravery
and
to
you
do
had
that.
like you had a brown paper bag, and like you fished out your copy of the Crow, and you're like, "Thanks a lot for ordering." And I was like,
did?
"Oh, yeah." And now this is so funny. This just fucking shows you how small Rittman is, right? Because I'm like,
oh yeah,
holy shit. Dave Ullman is on my fucking porch giving me a copy of his movie. Like, that's how cool this is.
That's
like,
nice.
So
that made me cry a little. Thank you. That's very cool. I didn't remember that because I think I was very stressed about that whole idea of like dropping things off at people's houses and stuff. That's very cool.
So around that same time, Dad's working at Capital City distributing comics, and I'm filling out the order form for the week, and I would always look at what was new, like what reissues were and stuff like that. And they reissued the compilation of all of the Crow issues, the
kitchen sink press.
Yep. Yeah, the big thick edition.
Yeah, the graphic novel as they call them.
Yeah, and I just put a check mark next to that. Because I was like, oh, I want to read this because this is what that movie is based off of.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. And it came and it went into the Foot Locker, and it literally, like, I never touched it. And I guarantee you it's down there right now, and it's pristine, like in pristine condition. Right
now you need to go back to that comic book guy and go check this shit out.
Yeah.
What do I get for that?
Yeah, so,
15 cents, bitch.
If I can find it, I will take a picture of that and tweet it out.
Oh, that'd be great.
If
it does not say now a major motion picture, that'd be pretty cool. Because they did that soon thereafter, because it became a very best-selling book after the film came out in May of 94.
Well, that really, to me, like, I realized that I like graphic novels much more. I loved comics as a kid, and my dad bought me comics out the butt. But I didn't realize that you needed to subscribe to get the story.
Yeah.
So I'd be reading these, I'm like, all right, what happened? And then I fell into the graphic novels. I'm like, oh, so it's all right here.
Yeah.
And then when Sin City came out, I went on Amazon and I bought all of them so I could know everything. Because I was so enamored by Robert Rodriguez and everything. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Oh my God. And this was
I love that movie. Like I went with Dave and Jackson and a few of us, and I was pretty much the only one that was like, I felt like I was the only one that was like, yeah, that was really good. And then everybody else was just kind of like, you know.
Oh, I remember being I remember digging that because that was literally what I was trying to do as a teenager. Like they brought that movie, that comic,
comic book.
But they were able to actually make it look like look like the art of that comic. It was incredible. Yep. Yeah, those are
Marv. Marv is probably the best character ever. Like just
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
Mickey Rourke character.
Mickey
And
Rourke
who,
is just
who better
so
to play that
fucking-
than Mickey Rourke, right?
No.
Yeah.
I remember Dave had this great line. He's like, why does Mickey Rourke have all that fucking makeup on? He's already fucked up. Like
That's what came to my mind immediately. I was like, that's the only problem I have with that character. Is like, you don't need all that makeup. Just let Mickey Rourke be Mickey Rourke. He's that guy.
he is that guy. That's so true.
Dave, I have a quick question. It was
Certainly.
So I am very much in tune with what James O'Barr did with The Crow.
Mhm.
Like the visceral part of it.
Like the extreme nature of the violence and such.
Absolutely. I'm like, okay, whatever. Does that make any sense?
No, wait, no. Yeah, say more about that. I'm very intrigued, but I haven't followed just yet.
Well, when I was, I went through boot camp, one of the worst, at least for the Marine Corps and the Army, and they showed us a lot of crazy slideshows and stuff to try and desensitize us to the violence.
Yeah, like what a great
Oh, I
idea.
never thought about that. Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
But it wasn't like we weren't aghast at it. We were just like, oh, this is what we're trying to be. This is what we want to be, and this is we're here to defend our country. We're here to do this and do that. But they're showing us this. Hey, this is what they do to us when we go over there. And I was in during. I wanted to be what's called a 912er.
What's
A
that?
912er is yeah, I didn't even know what was going on. I was walking to class on 9/11, and he said,
Oh, okay. I'm starting
So,
to piece it together.
a 912er is the guy that just, all right, fuck you, I'm going out.
Next day.
Next day, I'm out.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? What happened? I was just watching Monday Night Football last night, and you're saying, what? What just happened? And on my way to class, I stopped and ran back to my dorm room, and I was like, what the shit is going on? I was like, and I wanted to join the military at a high school. I wanted to go to West Point. I wanted to do this, that, other. And I didn't. I waited 2 years, and then during that period, a lot of crap happened, and I was just like, why am I not there? This is what I need to do. This is what I wanted to do out of high school. Why am I not there? I didn't connect with the visceral part until I did, or went through it, essentially what James O'Barr went through in the Marine Corps, because he joined during peacetime. That was 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and he was drawing combat manuals for the Marine Corps. So that's where
Exactly.
some of the sort of accuracy of his in the interesting nature of his artwork. Yeah, he's not like the Crow comics don't look like other comics. They have a very singular style, and it's a very singular voice, and it's he would so I was saying earlier how James O'Barr said he was writing it to try to channel the feelings that he had over his own personal trauma into some kind of creative force, which is something I relate to a lot. But he was talking about how for him, focusing all that attention in this way didn't really help. It actually just made him more focused on that rage and pain. And he called the sort of the drawings and the process, these like all these little deaths, and that it maybe didn't really help him exactly. It more like kind of exacerbated things. And when you read it, like it's oh man, it's an interesting way that story moves. Like so I laid out the plot earlier. But the way that it begins, you just have this character with Spikey's 80s punk rock hair, a long coat, and a painted on kind of harlequin like mask of he's got this ironic smile when he's very sad character. So it alternates between him hunting street thugs, trying to get cutting the people's fingers off, trying to get to these men whose names he heard when they were killing him and his fiance, T-Bird, Tom Tom, Tintin, Top Dollar, like these street names. And then it'll show him you know, you can just sort of hear the, you know, there's Kira lyrics on the page, and like you can hear that music playing as, you know, pictures of you or whatever. He's like literally looking at pictures of his lost life and crying. So it's like, it's this real like emo thing with this like radically super ultra violent like revenge fantasy, but made kind of, you know, made manifest real on the page. Yeah. And so when the violence happens, there's you know, it's an independent, you know, it was written not even to be published necessarily, ultimately published by this guy who saw this talent coming into his shop, that he started up a comic label that went like bankrupt, and ultimately the final issue of The Crow before it was collected in the graphic novel came out on Tundra, the Tundra label, which was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle guys. But like the other Caliber press that initially started to put it out went under because the guy didn't know how to, he just saw this incredible work being done. So yeah, it's this like, you know, people talk about, you know, passion projects. I mean, this is the epitome thereof. And so when you're reading it, like, and you see the guy crying and like the Crow, yeah, that in the movie and then just in a popular culture, it's not like it's like Frankenstein. It's not like the character is really the Crow, you know?
Right.
The Crow is the title because of that fixation on the bird and stuff before. Like the guy's name is Eric, and you know, it's a little of the Batman thing. He's like trying to strike fear into the heart of the men that he's encountering. He's like, tell these fucking guys I'm coming for them, you know? Yeah. So it alternates between that and him like being morose and crying in their old house. And like, he's trying to kill himself, like cut his own wrists. And it's like, yeah, I mean, when I picked up, so I went to see the film on opening night because I was a fan. This all ties together in a way, actually, because I was a fan of Bruce Lee growing up, as I've talked about.
I remember your dad taking us to go see that movie.
Did you come with us one? Yeah, I went like 3 times opening weekend. Were you on one of those, maybe?
Your dad, Jimbo, took us, me, Brian, and
you
to the first night, Barberton Theater, Lake Cinemas.
Oh, I remember Montrose.
Yo, Jimbo. Oh, my God. Yes.
It might have been Montrose. Yeah, it might have been Montrose.
I think so. Yeah, were people sitting in the aisles?
Yeah. Yes, they were.
That's definitely the one.
I saw it the night before in Worcester. And it was
that full? People were sitting in the aisles?
Yeah. I've rarely experienced anything like it. And it was similar the night before in Worcester where people were painted up in the makeup. Literally, this is 1994. I'm just a kid from small town Redmond. I'd never seen any kind of cosplay or any kind of commitment to a comic book character like this. Yeah. And I was there because I was a fan of Brandon Lee, the star of the film who was killed during the making of it. And I was a fan of him because of his father, Bruce Lee, who's one of whose films Moto's gonna walk us through. But so yeah, I was there and so taken aback by the heart of the movie, the style of the movie, the pure sort of raw emotion of the revenge and the simplicity of it, him hunting down the killers, and like you were right there. And so at the end of it, this dude stands up and he's like, "This movie sucked. The comic book's better. Come get it at my comic shop." And he gives like an address. And I was like, "Comic book? Oh yeah, that's right. It's based on a comic book. I knew that."
Oh wow.
So I went to seek out the comic book. I got it.
Did you go to that guy's place?
No, I didn't actually, because I was in Worcester and I lived closer to Wadsworth. So I went to a place in Wadsworth. The Rittmanites might remember this place. You could get baseball cards there as well.
Yeah,
you know, like
Wadsworth.
Yeah, it's like on the. You take, what is it? You take basically
57
Ohio. It's like Ohio. If you take Ohio all the way into Wadsworth, it dead ends.
We call it 57A.
Okay, so there's a little grocery store that used to be on the right, and it dead ends.
Market.
Cardinal Market, thank you. And so right in front of that was this place that in 1990 or 89, I was buying baseball cards. But when it came, I knew they sold comics too. So
that's where I got my first Punisher comic book.
Fucking nice. Yeah. So that was, I went there and I bought, I don't know if we bought, I think we just bought one, but ultimately I bought like 3 very quickly thereafter and started to try to film it on VHS. But I read the book in one night. I opened it and all these qualities that I'm talking about. Like I was familiar with the movie story, but it like, I read it in one sitting, which is not something I say of anything else. And granted, it's a comic book, so you can do that. I mean, it's a graphic novel, at least so many pages, but it also scared me. Like I was a little scared at 14 to like go to sleep. It had, I mean, that book got under my skin in a big bad way. And that's why I say about the visceralness of it. Cause it's like, it's just ink and paper, you know, but you can feel the trauma and the bloodshed and all of the tears. Ugh. And I'll say too, when I met the man that wrote it a couple years ago, like you see his eye, when I looked into his eyes, nice. he knew of me because of my, you know, spending so many years on this and getting to send it to him. Fans of the book became fans of our little VHS adaptation, so got it torrented and stuff. But looking into his eyes, those are Eric's eyes. It's fucked up, and like this, so it's a real human being on the page. And
yeah.
Anyway, so I've talked a lot about the book, but you know, the movie was my in. And ultimately, it was kind of by way of Bruce Lee in a way too.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just chime in real quick on your version of The Crow?
I mean, if it's
just
nice,
because
yeah.
no, it's definitely nice. I just don't feel like we've conveyed adequately, because I was talking to Double D about this, and he was not aware of the depth. So I'm going to give you my perspective of your time with your your movie.
Outstanding.
Yeah. Miramax said cease and desist.
Oh, they did say cease and desist. Yeah. I should have got that one of my visual aids.
So there's that, and there was a point in time where Dave caught a guy selling bootleg copies of his bootleg movie.
Yeah, I bought one
at a comic book festival. I
I got that on eBay, but I imagine they're I think they are in person somewhere.
But I just remember, and like, didn't you send an email then to the guy where you were just like, I already am breaking the rules by making this, and you're making it even, like, that was essentially like the message that you sent, like, maybe. And you're making it even worse because you're making like illegal copies of my illegal movie. Yeah.
That's very possible. I don't remember that specifically, but I wouldn't put it. It was hard for me when because I basically, when I finished it in 1998 after like 4 years, I did finish the version that I shared in high school, but excuse me. It was the early days of the internet. And so basically when I finished it, I sent notifications to the postcards to the people I knew in high school that said, hey man, I want to see this when it's done. And I would sell it at like cost of the VHS and clamshell and then the artwork and stuff. But then I had found a few Crow sites online, and I sent notifications say, hey, I made this movie. It's based very faithfully on the book. If you're interested, I'd love to send you a copy. And so I did, and so those were the kind of copies that were out there. And then there was a couple I sent to some magazines, and that's what led to it getting back to James O'Barr eventually. But yeah, and then so once there was like, it's like this podcast or my music or anything else, like there's blood in the water. Like if people are paying attention to something I put my heart into, I'm like, I'm in. You know, it's like okay. And so I dedicated myself, like okay, I'm gonna make something of all this behind the scenes footage we have. We're gonna make a little video and a website, and so I did all that. And then Miramax, Crow Vision or whatever, they were still making Crow sequels at the time, so they reached out to me, and I was like, oh cool, they're reaching out to me. But they reached out to me so that legal counsel could be like, yeah, you can't, you have to stop everything you're doing. It doesn't matter, you're not trying to make money. This is our thing. And even if you have like the box set that came out with the third film in like 2001, there's a little thing in the commemorative booklet that says something to the effect about copyright. And I was like, oh Jesus, they're literally talking to me. They're like,
oh my gosh, that's
so I was probably pretty sore at the time at the guy, especially because I had made this like digitally cleaned up. This is the 2000, so I just got access to nonlinear editing. I was able to kind of, because we shot on color VHS by fucking candlelight sometimes on consumer gear. So I was able to kind of like make it look as good as possible. A couple years later, there's an edition in 1993 before the movie came out that actually has a soundtrack companion CD where the lyrics are like a collaboration between James O'Barr and the guy that wrote the introduction, John Bergen. And I got permission from him to use the soundtrack that he made to the book for our little movie. So I rescored our movie to his songs written with James O'Barr's lyrics, and he had a couple musical like pieces that didn't have, it was like heavy metal music.
I was the musical supervisor for James O'Barr.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. So there was one ballad on the piece, and there's a lot of romantic things about this movie. The Crow is ultimately a very romantic story about someone, because the idea in a way is like that he can't rest. That he can't rest until this right has been wronged. And so when he's trying to cut his wrist and kill himself, like he can't, because in the comic he's just sort of brought back of his own will. And they invent some stuff in the film as to like some rules about the afterlife. But in the movie or in the comic, he's just brought back out of sheer willpower to seek vengeance. And then when when the vengeance has been had, he blows his fucking brains out, and then hopefully they don't show that explicitly, and that's one of the reasons I went to the internet to try to get to the bottom of what these final panels were. But in any event, so there's one ballad, and I needed to help with the romance, and we were going to try to make it like a legit version that could possibly be shared. So I'm like, well, my brother's a good musician, so I give him the ballad, and he creates instrumental versions thereof to help round out the score of this piece that literally almost no one has seen this version that was created in 2001. But it's kind of great. Like our original version had like the Joy Division songs, The Cure, all the bands that I knew to influence the texts. But then ultimately we got permission to this other music. Anyway, I'm kind of getting far afield, but yeah, like, so Double D, I was fucking into it for a long time. Oh, and then